and welcome to Zenith Academy Online. Today, we are going to study the topic photosynthesis. Now, my dear children, all of you know that photosynthesis, just a second, let me take the laser pointer. Yeah. So, photosynthesis in a way is the most significant life process. We know it provides food not only to the plant itself but to all animal life including humans as well. And also the life supporting free oxygen gas in the atmosphere for breathing. Okay, so we all know what is photosynthesis. The plants take in water from the soil through the roots, also carbon dioxide from the air, and in presence of sunlight, okay, the chlorophyll helps in production of glucose, which is the food that we all get, and the byproduct, that is oxygen gas, which is also very important for sustaining life. Okay, so you can see here light plus water plus CO2 gives sugar plus O2. Okay, and this food not only we or the plants take in, but also the animals also consume this. Okay, and they need oxygen as well. So this oxygen is also provided by this process of photosynthesis. Now, what is photosynthesis? Photosynthesis is the process by which living plant cells which contain chlorophyll, okay, living plant cells containing chlorophyll produce food substances like glucose and starch from carbon dioxide and water by using light energy. Plants release oxygen as the byproduct during photosynthesis. So water is taken up by the roots, okay, from soil. Carbon dioxide is taken in from the air. Okay. Sunlight falls on the pigment chlorophyll which is present in the leaf, and leaves in the process of photosynthesis produces carbohydrates and oxygen. Now, what is the importance of photosynthesis? We all know. First, it is food for all. So, photosynthesis is ultimately the source of energy and food for all living beings, directly for plants and indirectly for animals and humans who eat the plants or the plant eating animals. So, directly it is a source for the plant itself, but for us and for other animals, it is the indirect source of food. So, this is the formula. Later on, we will study the formula in detail. Then oxygen to breathe in. Photosynthesis is the only biological process which releases oxygen into the atmosphere, and oxygen supports all life on earth. No living being can remain alive without oxygen. Now, my dear children, this is just a skeletal reaction. So, the balance reaction we'll see later. So, we know carbon dioxide plus water in the presence of chlorophyll and sunlight produces glucose and oxygen. Now, let's talk about chlorophyll. The vital plant pigment chlorophyll, where chloro means green and phyll means leaf, is the green pigment which is found in plant's leaf surface. So, you can see this is how it looks like. So, and this is one cell. If you see the chlorophyll very clearly, it is something like this. It is contained in a microscopic cell organelles called chloroplast. Okay, so there is a microscopic cell organelle. So inside the cell there are different cell organelles. Cell organelles are the organs of the cell, and that is known as chloroplast. So this is the diagram of the chloroplast. Chloroplasts are minute oval bodies bounded by double membrane, and their interior contains closely packed flattened sacs, that is thylakoids, arranged in piles, and the whole thing is known as grana, lying in a colorless ground substance called stroma. So here you can see this is granum. Each single one is known as thylakoid. The single flattened sac is known as thylakoids, and a lot of thylakoids, the pile of thylakoids is known as grana. Okay, a single pile is known as granum, and a lot of piles together is known as grana. Okay, lying in a colorless ground substance called stroma. So this substance inside, the colorless substance inside, this liquid inside is known as stroma. Now, ordinarily, there may be 40 to 50 chloroplasts in one particular cell. So, in one cell, how many chloroplasts are there? 40 to 50. So, you see here I have given a diagram of plant cell. So, in this plant cell, there are how many chloroplasts? Can you see here? These are the chloroplasts. Okay, and this is the diagram of one chloroplast. The labeling of chloroplast is important. You write this granum or grana, anything is okay. And this one sac is known as thylakoid. The whole thing is known as granum. Okay, and the colorless liquid is called stroma. There is inner membrane and outer membrane. Always remember that chloroplast has two membranes, inner and outer. Okay, so pigment chlorophyll is contained in the walls of thylakoid. Now, this is very, very important. Where is chlorophyll found? In the walls of thylakoid. So, whenever it is asked in the exams, especially for ICSE class 10, you have to write it is present in the walls of thylakoids in chloroplasts. Okay. So, you can see here I have made a circle to show you that this is a granum. Okay. One thylakoid. Okay. In the walls of the thylakoid, the chlorophyll is present in the walls. Okay. Now, it is a highly complex substance composed of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen and magnesium. So, remember my dear children, magnesium is the main. Can you see this magnesium metal in between? Okay. So, this is the complex of magnesium where what are the other elements joined? The other elements are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen. Can you see? Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen and oxygen. And the main metal inside the complex is magnesium. Okay, magnesium is the metal in the form of complex. Okay, and these are the other substances like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen. You don't have to remember this diagram. Just remember the constituents. I have given this diagram so that it is very clear to you and you remember the constituents very well. Now, chloroplasts are mainly contained in the mesophyll cells located between the upper epidermis and the lower epidermis, that is in palisade cells and spongy cells of leaves. These are also found in guard cells of stroma and in outer layers of young green stems. So, to explain you the position of chloroplast, I have given you this diagram. Can you see this upper epidermis? Okay, and this is the lower epidermis. So, these are the palisade tissues. Mesophyll cells are divided into palisade mesophyll and these are spongy mesophills. Can you see? These ones are spongy mesophills which have air space in between and the top layer has palisade mesophyll. So, maximum of your chloroplasts are contained in these mesophyll cells. And in palisade and spongy, the maximum number is there in palisade. Okay. So, and they are also found in guard cells. You know, these are the guard cells. Can you see the guard cells here? Where you have the opening stoma. Okay. So, in guard cells also chlorophyll is found. But maximum chlorophyll is found in palisade mesophyll and spongy mesophyll. Now, there are more than 5 lakh chloroplasts per square millimeter of leaf surface. Okay, so you can imagine per square millimeter, 1 millimeter is so small. So in 1 square millimeter, that is millimeter square, if I draw a box of 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter, in that 5 lakh chloroplasts are present. Okay, now there are 9 types of chlorophyll, my dear children. 2 out of these, that is chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B, are best known and most abundant. I have just given a picture for reference. You don't have to learn them. Just remember that there are total how many chlorophylls? 9. Now, the chlorophyll absorbs light at both the ends of the visible spectrum, that is blue and red. Okay, it absorbs blue and red and reflect away the green light. That is why chlorophyll appears green, because it is reflecting green. It is not absorbing green. It is able to reflect green, but it is absorbing what? Blue and red. Okay. So when sunlight falls on it, the whole figure falls on it, only green light. So this band is what? that is reflected. Otherwise, both the ends, that is the blue end and the red end, is being absorbed. Okay, that is why we see different shades of green in the leaf. Now let's talk about sunlight and chlorophyll. What's the relationship? So chlorophyll is highly sensitive to light. So too much light may destroy it. Okay, so it is highly sensitive to light, although it requires sunlight, but too much light may destroy the chlorophyll. However, the formation of chlorophyll itself depends on the exposure of plant to light. The grass, now this is very important, look here very carefully children. The grass growing in the shade under a stone. Okay, so if there is a big stone and the grass is growing under the shade where the sunlight is not able to reach, okay, then that grass turns yellowish due to non-formation of new chlorophyll and due to disintegration of the older one in the absence of light. So even if the light is absent, then the chlorophyll will disintegrate, okay, and also the new chlorophyll will not form. Whereas if you give too much light also, then also it is highly sensitive and this may get destroyed by it. So an optimum amount of sunlight is required for the proper functioning of chlorophyll. Now see here, regulation of stomatal opening for letting in carbon dioxide. We all know that during the day the stomata opens up. Okay, so when it opens up, the plant is able to take in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and release oxygen. Okay, now how does it open and close? Let us study this very carefully. Now watch here very carefully, dear children. This inner layer is slightly thicker than the outside layer. Okay, inner layer is thicker where it opens to stoma. This layer is thicker and this layer is thin. So when the plant absorbs water from the roots, the water comes in through the roots, then the stem, and from the veins it enters the cells. Now from the neighboring cells, okay, when water is drawn in, this becomes turgid and the turgor pressure. And since this is the thin wall, the water enters from here. Okay, this is the thin wall, and when it expands, when water fills in, the turgor pressure will push this and this will arch more. Okay, the outer layer will arch more because from here it is absorbing a lot of water and it will arch more. So if the outer layer will arch more, it will form shape like this and you get a hole here. Okay, stroma, and through this opening the gases are exchanged. Now during the night when there is not enough water in the leaf, okay, then this layer being thinner will give out water to the neighboring cells, and when it gives out water to the neighboring cells, what happens, my dear children? It becomes flaccid, it becomes loosened and the opening gets closed like this. Okay, it becomes normal flaccid and the turgidity is lost, and you see now this is not arched anymore. Okay, so this way stroma gets closed. Now in the opening and closing of stomata, dear children, there are two theories about the opening and closing of stomata. The first one is potassium ion concentration theory, which is the recent one, which is the recent accepted one, or the new or modern theory, you can say potassium ion concentration. And there is a sugar concentration theory, which is an old theory. So let us talk about both these theories. So only new theory is been asked in the examination, but you should also know the old theory. That is why I have given up the old theory as well. Now let's talk about the new theory, that is the K+, that is potassium ion concentration theory. Now according to the recent this is K+, okay, there is a misprint. According to the recent K+ ion concentration theory, the stomatal opening and closing depend on what? It depends on generation of potassium ion gradient. Now what is this potassium ion gradient and how it is generated? Let us talk about it. During the daytime, okay, the chloroplast in the guard cells photosynthesize. Okay, so in the daytime, I told you already that guard cells also contain chloroplast, right? So in the guard cells, the chloroplast are there. So photosynthesis will take place and it leads to the production of energy in the form of ATP molecule. We know that glucose is formed, okay, oxygen is formed and energy is formed. So ATP is formed. Now this ATP is used to actively pump the potassium ion of the adjacent cells into the guard cells. I have already explained you active transport in my previous lesson, right? So you remember that in active transport, use of energy was there. So this ATP is now used to actively pump the potassium ions of the adjacent cells into the guard cells. Always remember, in the active transport, what happens? The ions will, or the solute will move from its lower concentration to higher concentration, correct? So in the adjacent cells, if potassium ions are there, even if in low concentration, the ATP is used to drive it into the guard cells. Now increased potassium ion concentration in the guard cells make them hypertonic. We know what are hypertonic solution. I have already explained you in my last lecture. Hypertonic solution means the concentration of the solute or of whatever we are talking about, especially solute, not water, is more. If the concentration of solute is more, or salts or ions is more, it is known as hypertonic solution. So now if it is hypertonic, means these ions are more and water is less, correct? So more water from the adjacent cells is drawn in and the cells become turgid and they move outwards to open out to the stomatal pore. I told you they arch outwards so that the stomatal pore opens up. Now the reverse happens at night. K plus ions leak out. Leak out means it goes to the adjacent cells again, thus reducing the turgor of the guard cells and the stomatal pore closes. So I hope this is clear. I'll just go back again. What happens? During the daytime, the guard cells will photosynthesize because it has chloroplast, and this leads to the production of energy molecules, that is ATP. Now these ATPs actively pump the potassium ions of the adjacent cells into the guard cells and thus making the guard cells hypertonic. Hypertonic means now potassium ion concentration is more, water is less. So if water is less, water will move from high concentration to low concentration. So water will move from more water. So more water from the adjacent cells is drawn in the guard cells and they become more turgid and move outwards. They arch outwards to open the stomatal pore, and the reverse happens at night. I hope this is very clear to all of you. Now let's move on to sugar concentration theory. Okay, so according to the old sugar concentration theory, during the daytime the guard cells begin photosynthesis. We know guard cells begin photosynthesis and the sugar or the glucose produced during the process increases the osmotic pressure. So in the first theory we were talking about ATP and then ATP drawing in the potassium ions and then turgor pressure increases. Here we are talking about sugar. The presence of sugar or glucose increases and hence osmotic pressure increases, which draws in water from the adjoining cells due to endosmosis. Now here there is endosmosis. Endosmosis is what? When water comes inside. Endosmosis, okay, diffuses inside. Okay, now why will water diffuse? Because see, glucose is produced, so the guard cells become more concentrated in glucose and less concentrated in water. So water will move from high concentration to low concentration. So easily without the use of energy it will move, water will move. Hence the guard cells become turgid and bulge outwards due to the thin outer wall, thus widening the stomatal opening lying in between. Is that clear to you? Now as the stomata open, the diffusion of gases in and out begins for fulfilling the need of photosynthesis and for allowing transpiration. Okay, we all know transpiration. I have already explained transpiration in detail. Now closing of stomata, if for any reason the water content of the leaf is falling short, the water is drawn out of the guard cells. We know when at night when the photosynthesis is not happening, at that time what happens? Water is less because water is not being absorbed. Okay, water is less and so the stomata or the guard cells give out water to the neighboring cells due to exosmosis and making them flaccid. As a result, their inner thick walls straighten to close in the stomata. Now my children, for the process of photosynthesis, it is very important to understand this diagram. So mesophyll cells, I already told you what are mesophyll cells, palisade tissue and spongy cells, palisade cells and spongy cells. You can see this one on upper epidermis is known as palisade and these ones are known as spongy mesophills. Okay, so in the mesophyll cells in a leaf are these are the principal centers of this activity, of photosynthesis. Now during daytime when sunlight falls on the leaf, the light energy is trapped by the chlorophyll of the upper layers of mesophyll. Okay, that is these upper layers, palisade mesophyll. Okay, especially the palisade cell. This energy is utilized in chemical process involved in the manufacture of food, where the raw material used are carbon dioxide and water. We know that maximum photosynthesis will take place in palisade mesophyll because it is lying upwards. No, can you see? So it is very easy to absorb sunlight and carbon dioxide. So in the palisade tissue, chlorophyll is already present. It absorbs carbon dioxide. Water is drawn. See, water comes in like this through the veins of the leaf. Okay. Now let's talk about carbon dioxide and water. So carbon dioxide from the atmosphere enters the leaf how? By diffusion down a concentration gradient. That is higher concentration outside the leaf and less concentration inside. So that is why it moves from high concentration to low concentration through stomata. It enters through stomata. Now water from the soil is taken up by the roots, sent up through the stem and finally to the leaves where it is distributed in the mesophyll tissues. So if you see here, from the stomata the carbon dioxide enters. Okay. Carbon dioxide enters through here, water enters through here and sunlight falls maximum on this upper epidermis. Okay. Now, this is the chemical equation that you have to learn. For ICSE class 10, this is the chemical equation you have to learn. 6 molecules of CO2 plus 12 molecules of water. In the earlier classes, we have been studying 6 and 6 for balancing, but now you have to remember this. It is 12 water molecules here and 6 water molecules here. So it becomes actually 6 here, right? But you have to write this particular reaction, watch here very carefully. 6 carbon dioxide molecules reacts with 12 water molecules in the presence of chlorophyll and sunlight to form 1 molecule of glucose. You can see C6H12O6. 6 molecules of water and 6 molecules of oxygen. Okay, so the glucose molecule is a simple sugar readily soluble in water. The 6 molecules of water liberated at the end of the process are those that are reformed during a chain of reactions. So these are reformed during this chain of reactions and not out of the original ones. It is not that 6 molecules of here are remaining. It is reformed. Okay, so learn this reaction very well. So they will ask you how many water molecules are required in producing 1 molecule of glucose. So you will say 12 water molecules are required and 6 CO2 is required to form 1 molecule of sugar. They can also ask you if 1 molecule of sugar is formed, how much oxygen is released in the atmosphere. You will say 6 molecules of oxygen is released and also 6 molecules of water vapor is produced. Okay. The 2 main phases of photosynthesis. This is a very, very important part of this chapter and very frequently asked in the examination. So there are 2 main phases of photosynthesis, my dear children. Light dependent phase and light independent phase, which is also known as dark phase. Okay. So let's get started quickly without wasting time. The first one is light dependent phase. This phase is also known as photochemical phase. Now, in this phase, the light plays the key role. Obviously, since it is a light dependent phase, so light is playing the key role. Now, in this, a series of chemical reactions occur in very quick succession. Okay, a lot of chemical reactions are occurring one after one very quickly. Okay, and these reactions are initiated by light. They start by light. Okay, and therefore this phase is called photochemical phase. Photon is the bundle of light. Chemical is because chemical reactions is happening in this phase. So photochemical phase. Now the light reaction takes place where? This is very important question. It takes place in thylakoids of the chloroplast. Okay. Chloroplast is the cell organelle present in the plant cell. So in the plant cell, chloroplast is there, and in the chloroplast, thylakoids is there. Okay, so it takes place exactly in thylakoids containing chlorophyll of the chloroplast. Step 1 in this is the activation of chlorophyll. So first the chlorophyll gets activated. The chlorophyll on exposure to light energy becomes activated by absorbing photons. So when on the chlorophyll sunlight falls, okay, it becomes activated by absorbing the photons. Photon is what? It is the smallest unit of light energy. Okay, so let's see how it happens. So after the activation of chlorophyll, now second step is splitting of water. Okay, now the absorbed energy is used in splitting the water molecule, that is H2O, into two components, hydrogen and oxygen, and releasing electrons. Now electrons will be very useful here in these reactions. We will study later. So right now you understand that first the chlorophyll absorbed the photon, then the absorbed energy is used in splitting the water molecules into two components, hydrogen and oxygen, and releasing the electrons. So see the reaction here. Two molecules of water is absorbing how many photons? Energy of 4 photons. Okay. So the energy of 4 photons is helpful in splitting two molecules of water into 4 H plus ions, that is hydrogen ions, 4 electron and oxygen molecule, 1 oxygen molecule. This reaction is known as photolysis. Lysis means breaking. Okay. So which means splitting by light. So photo means light and lysis by breaking. So what happened in a photochemical phase? First, chlorophyll got activated by absorption of light energy. Okay. Then this absorbed energy is used in splitting of the water. Now the splitting of water is known as photolysis. This is very important reaction. Two molecules of water, okay, with the help of the energy of 4 photons got split into 4 hydrogen ions, 4 electrons and 1 molecule of oxygen. Okay, remember this. So dear children, photolysis occurs in the grana of chloroplast and is defined as splitting of H and O, H2O molecules into hydrogen ions and oxygen in the presence of light. So this is how you will define photolysis. That is the second step. This step happens where grana of the chloroplast, obviously in the grana only the thylakoid is there, and it is defined as the splitting of water molecules. So there is a spelling mistake. This is H2O. Splitting of water molecules into hydrogen ions and oxygen in the presence of light. So whenever photolysis is asked, my dear children, please write this equation as well. Okay. Now let's see what is the end result or the products of photolysis. Okay. So you see here this diagram. Okay. First step, what is happening? Light energy is absorbed by photosynthetic pigments, that is chlorophyll. Okay. And it is falling, this light energy is absorbed. Now this water is there, this water will get split. Okay. So the hydrogen ions, now when this water is split, can you see this hydrogen ions? The hydrogen ions are picked up by a compound NADP, that is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. Nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate to form NADPH. So can you see this H plus was taken by NADP. Okay, this NADP absorbed the H plus and formed NADPH. Okay, see the reaction. This is a very important reaction. Okay, NADP plus electron plus H plus in the presence of enzyme forms NADPH. Is that clear? Yes. Now you see. Wait, let me erase this. Okay. Now the oxygen component is given out as molecular oxygen. We saw here in the reaction. See, the oxygen was given out like this as a molecule, correct? So the oxygen component is given out as molecular oxygen. The oxygen component is given out as molecular oxygen. This was the second part. See, H plus was used by NADP. Okay, H plus was used by NADP to form NADPH2. Oxygen was released as molecular oxygen. And then the electrons. Okay, the third one was electrons. Can you see? This is electrons. So what happens to electrons? The electrons are used in converting ADP, that is adenosine diphosphate, into the energy rich compound ATP. We all know ATP. So what happens? ADP, by absorbing this, by using this electron, is getting converted into ATP. Okay, by adding one phosphate group, that is inorganic phosphate. So this electron is used, this addition of phosphate happens, and adenosine diphosphate converts into adenosine triphosphate. Okay, like this. ADP plus inorganic phosphate forms ATP, and the electrons are used in doing this. So this process is called phosphorylation. Phosphorylation, that is addition of phosphate, and since the energy used in the process comes from light, that is photons, the process is termed as photophosphorylation. Okay, phosphorylation is addition of phosphate, and since it takes place in the presence of light or because of light, it is known as photophosphorylation. Is this third step clear? So I'll repeat this again. First, the hydrogen ions are picked up by NADP to form NADPH, okay, in the presence of enzyme. Second, the oxygen component is given out as molecular oxygen. And third, the electrons are used in converting ADP into ATP by addition of one phosphate, and this is known as photophosphorylation. Clear to you guys? Now let's come on to the dark reaction, dark phase. Okay, the second type, light independent. So the old term dark phase, previously we used to call it as dark phase, but it did not mean that it occurs when it is dark, that is at night. It only meant that the reactions are not dependent on light. It can happen without light also. Okay, that is why it is now better to call it as light independent phase. Okay, let's see what is light independent phase. Now this phase is also known as biosynthetic phase. Remember the word biosynthetic phase. The reactions in this phase do not require light energy, and they occur simultaneously with the light reaction. So whenever light reaction is happening, the dark reaction also keeps on happening simultaneously with it, along with it. Okay, and the time gap between the two being even less than 1,000th of a second. So itna साथ साथ होता रहता है. There is absolutely no time gap, and the time gap is less than 1,000th of a second. So almost negligible. So now let's understand what is happening here in this diagram. So you see light dependent reactions. Very clear it was. It occurs in the chlorophyll containing part, that is thylakoid of the chloroplast. Here what is happening? Light is used in the splitting of water. Water splits into, see, oxygen. So oxygen is given out. It is taken up by human beings, by animals, and even by plants at night. Then this hydrogen H plus was used by NADP to convert into NADPH. Correct? Then this electron was used here as well. An electron is used here as well in phosphorylation, in conversion of ADP to ATP. Okay, with the addition of phosphate, inorganic phosphate. So this was light dependent reaction. Correct? Now let us understand what is light independent reaction. Now children, this is not there in detail for you, but I will explain you a bit, but this will not be asked in detail to you. Okay. So what happens is here, the hydrogen of NADPH, that is this NADPH which is formed in this reaction. Okay, this hydrogen is released. Okay, the hydrogen of NADPH is used to combine. So this H plus, my dear children, combines with carbon dioxide which comes from the air. Okay, so this H plus combines with this carbon dioxide to form glucose. Okay, by utilizing the ATP energy, by utilizing this energy, the energy by this ATP which is produced. Okay, to ultimately produce glucose. Now the fixation of CO2, it is in the atmosphere. So this fixation of CO2 is very important. So how does this fixation of CO2 happens? See, fixation of CO2. Okay, fixation of CO2 occurs in the number of steps using a special carbon dioxide acceptor compound, and this compound is written like this, RUBP. Where is it in the wait? RUBP. Yes, it is written like this, and this is known as ribulose bisphosphate. Okay, ribulose bisphosphate. Now, many a times students write it biphosphate. It is not biphosphate. It is ribulose bisphosphate. Okay. Now, this fixation is catalyzed by an enzyme known as ribulose bisphosphate carboxylase. Okay. So, fixation of carbon dioxide by hydrogen in the presence of ATP to form glucose. Okay, is the main step. Okay. Now, in this step, this fixation happens with the help of RUBP, okay, acceptor compound, RUBP, okay, ribulose biphosphate, and this is catalyzed by, this reaction is catalyzed by Rubisco. Okay, I will write Rubisco here like this. Rubisco. What is Rubisco? Ribulose, I will write the full form, ribulose bisphosphate carboxylase. Okay, so I am repeating light independent reaction, dark reaction once again. So this NADPH which was formed in the light dependent reaction, okay, gave away H plus again, and this hydrogen was used to trap or fix the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere by the use of ATP molecule, and this happened with the use of RUBP. Okay, this is a carbon dioxide acceptor compound, RUBP, ribulose biphosphate, and this reaction was catalyzed by Rubisco enzyme. What is Rubisco? Ribulose bisphosphate carboxylase. Is that clear to you guys? Now this glucose that has been formed, my dear children, okay, gets converted into starch and gets stored in the leaf and other parts of the plant. Okay, so this glucose, let's study what happens about this glucose. So the conversion of glucose into starch and other chemicals. Most green plants convert this glucose into starch as soon as it is formed during photosynthesis. Now, few glucose molecules are transformed to produce one molecule of starch. So, one molecule of starch is produced by several glucose molecules. The reaction is not in your course. Okay. Now, this process is called polymerization. You know polymerization? When two or more than two molecules join together, they form polymers. Okay. So, many monomers joining together to form long chains known as polymers. So, similarly, several glucose molecules join together to form molecule of starch. This process is known as polymerization. Now, some plants change glucose even to sucrose, okay, that is cane sugar, which is chemically called disaccharide or double sugar, okay, like in the case of sugarcane, okay. Also, some convert them into oils, okay, different types of oils. So, this is how glucose is converted. So, several glucose molecules converted into one molecule of starch by a process known as polymerization. Some plants change glucose to sucrose as well, like cane sugar, and some of them convert them into some oils. Hello my dear students, and welcome to Zenith Academy Online once again. Today we are going to do yet another concept in the chapter photosynthesis, and this concept is adaptations in leaf to perform photosynthesis. Why are leaves adapted to perform photosynthesis and what are the adaptations? Okay. So the first adaptation is large surface area of the leaf. So if the leaf has a large surface area, it can, there can be maximum light absorption because of large surface area. Now in many leaves, like you can see here this diagram of oleander and pine, the leaves narrows down. The leaves narrows down so that they can reduce transpiration. But this feature also helps in increasing the surface area. If the leaf is narrow, so around the whole leaf, the surface area increases, right? Had it been like this, so only this area is getting the light. But now it has become very thin, narrow leaves. So all around the leaf, okay, the surface is increased. So first point was large surface area. Second point is leaf arrangement. So whenever you see a plant like this, you can see this is the stem and the leaves are like this. They are like this, okay, outside. So the arrangement is such that when light falls on it, it falls at 90 degree. Can you see the diagram and understand? So leaf arrangement at right angle to the light source to obtain maximum light. So if the light falls obliquely, okay, the maximum light will not fall. Whenever it falls at right angles, then maximum light falls on the leaves and it helps in photosynthesis. We all know that sunlight is helpful in photosynthesis. So the second adaptation in leaf is the way it is arranged, leaf arrangement at right angles to the light source. The third point is cuticle and upper epidermis. Can you see in the diagram cuticle and upper epidermis? Sorry. So see here, this is the cuticle and this is the upper epidermis. I'll show you with the pen. See, this is the cuticle, the upper layer, and this is the upper epidermis. So they are transparent and waterproof, which allows the light to enter freely, and we know light is required for the process of photosynthesis. So the third adaptation is cuticle and upper epidermis are transparent and waterproof to allow light to freely enter. The fourth adaptation is lots of stomata are there on the leaf. So numerous stomata allow rapid exchange of gases, that is oxygen and carbon dioxide, which is required for photosynthesis. The fifth point is the leaves are very thin. Okay, I'm talking about the thickness and not the surface area. It is very thin. So if you take a book like this, okay, this is the surface area, whereas this is the thickness. So when you see, this is very thin in case of leaf. Okay. So the thickness of, now since the thickness is very less, it is very thin, it means the distance between the two cells, the distance between different cells where different steps of photosynthesis happening is very less. Okay, so there is rapid transport. So you know, from the stomata the gases enter, from the upper epidermis the light is entering. Okay, so since the distance between the cells is very less now, so there will be rapid transport of these things and photosynthesis will take place very rapidly. The next point is chloroplasts are concentrated in the upper layers of the leaf to obtain light energy very quickly. So the chloroplast, okay, those cells in the leaf which contain the chloroplast are mainly present at the upper layers of the leaf. You know, we have already studied this in detail. The palisade tissues, can you see here? These ones, and the here maximum, you know, here maximum photosynthesis takes place. So these are present in the upper layers of the leaf. Okay, and very less photosynthesis happens in the stomata or in the below level. So they are all at the upper layers of the leaf so that they can obtain energy very quickly. The last point is extensive vein system. Can you see in the leaf there is extensive vein system for rapid transport to and fro the mesophyll cells. Okay, we know photosynthesis happens in mesophyll cells. So there is a rapid, there is an extensive vein system. So from the veins of the leaf only the water comes in through the roots. Okay, and from here only the other things, that the carbohydrates and all pass. So extensive vein system helps in the rapid transport to and from the mesophyll cells. So children, these were the 7 different adaptations. so that the leaf is able to perform photosynthesis very well. So write the answer very perfectly. You should know all the 7 adaptations really well. I've tried my level best to give you the best of diagrams and examples to understand this concept. I hope you have liked the video. If you have liked the video, do give it a thumbs up, write in the comment section, subscribe to the channel and share this with all your friends. Also, please keep on watching the next modules for understanding the whole chapter of photosynthesis very well. Bye-bye my dear students, and keep the learning always on. Hello my dear students, and welcome to Zenith Academy Online once again. So this is the continuation of the chapter photosynthesis, and in this module we will study the end result of the product of photosynthesis. So my dear children, there are 3 end products for photosynthesis, that is glucose, water and oxygen. So this reaction is extremely important. I have explained you this reaction in the first module or the first part of this chapter. So remember, 6 molecules of CO2 combines with 12 molecules of water, okay, in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll to form 1 molecule of glucose, 6 molecules of water and 6 molecules of oxygen. Okay, so what are the products? Glucose, water and oxygen. These are the 3 products. So let's talk about glucose in detail. So children, this is the simple sugar glucose is used in 4 different ways as required by the plants. Now, what are the 4 ways in which glucose is required by the plant? First, it is immediately consumed by the plant cells for its functioning and for its growth. Second, it is stored in the form of insoluble starch. So, glucose converts into insoluble starch and it is stored, okay, for later use. Then, it is converted into sucrose. This is the 4th point. In the fruits, it gets converted into sucrose, and that's why it tastes sweet, and it is used in synthesizing fats, proteins, etc. So these are the 4 uses of glucose. Okay, it is immediately consumed by the plant cells. It is stored in the form of insoluble starch. It gets converted into sucrose and it is used in synthesizing fats, proteins, etc. Okay. Second is water. So water produced in the process may be reutilized in the continuation for the continuation of photosynthesis. So this reaction you should learn it by heart, ICSE students. These water molecules which are produced, okay, are reused for the continuation of photosynthesis. Okay, so even if there is less water absorbed from the roots, the water that is produced here can be reutilized. Okay. Then about oxygen. So some of the oxygen may be used in respiration in the leaf cells itself. Okay. So the oxygen that is produced, not all the oxygen is given out. It is some of the oxygen may be used in the respiration of the leaf cells, and this phenomena is called photorespiration. But the majority of the oxygen, the major portion of it is not required, and it diffuses out into the atmosphere through stomata. So this oxygen goes to the atmosphere through stomata. So in a sense, even this oxygen is not a waste, right? Because all the organisms, like human beings, all the organisms require it for their existence, including the plants which require it at night. Even the plants again take in this oxygen at night. We have already studied this. Right? So this oxygen, okay, which is a product, first is used in the photorespiration of the leaf cells. Second, when it is given out, it is used by human beings and other animals for our respiration, and it is also used by plants during night. Okay. So now what happens to the synthesized food, the food that has been produced, and how it is translocated? This is very important from MCQ point of view, my dear children, so pay attention. Food manufactured in the leaf is translocated. We don't call it transported. We call it translocated because it changes its location. Okay. Now food manufactured in the leaf is required for use by all the other parts of the plant as well. So where is food produced? Leaf. but all the other plants also need this food for their growth. Okay, so glucose is formed in the leaf very rapidly during photosynthesis, we all know, and it cannot be transported to other parts with the same rapidity. जितनी स्पीड से वो बनता है उतनी ही स्पीड से सभी पार्ट्स पे नहीं जाता है. What happens? It is converted into insoluble starch for temporary storage in the leaf. Okay, temporary leaf में storage करने के लिए it has to be insoluble starch. Soluble होगा तो वो water में dissolve होकर transport हो जाएगा, हमें store करना है. So for storage, first it is converted into insoluble starch for temporary storage. Now at night what happened? This starch is reconverted into soluble sugar. Now at night, okay, the starch is converted back into soluble sugar, which is transported in the solution form. Because now it is soluble, it will dissolve in water, and in the solution form, it will be transported through the veins of the leaf and down through the phloem of the stem. So in this way, it gets transported or translocated. So we call it translocated to different parts of the plant, where now wherever it goes, okay, now it goes to different parts of the plant. Now there also it can be reconverted into starch for storage. Because see, in the case of potato, we see a lot of starch, right? Because there also again it will get stored. वो बोलेगा यार leaf जब देगा तब मैं पहले से अपना store करके रखता हूँ. So this is again reconverted into starch for storage to produce energy for various functions in the plant. I hope this is very clear. Glucose is produced by photosynthesis very rapidly. With the same rapidity, it cannot be transferred. Okay, so what happens? Temporarily, it converts into insoluble starch and gets stored. At night, it again converts into soluble sugar, and then it is transported in the solution form through the veins of the leaf. Okay, now then it goes to different parts of the plant. Now, if that part of the plant wants to store it, then it will again reconvert it into starch for storage. I hope this is very clear to all of you. Today we are studying factors affecting photosynthesis. This is a part of the chapter photosynthesis for all the boards, and this is specially made for ICSE class 10. So let's go ahead, children. So now what are the different factors which affect the rate of photosynthesis? So there are certain external factors as well as certain internal factors. So first I have listed them here. Let's see. Okay. So light intensity is the external factor. It doesn't depend on the plant, right? Light intensity. Then we will talk about carbon dioxide concentration, temperature and water content. Okay. So all these are external factors. Then what are the internal factors which depends on the plants? So chlorophyll, protoplasm and the structure of leaf. So let's talk about these external and internal factors in detail. First we are talking about external factors. So we will be talking about light and CO2 concentration. So see here on the right hand side I have given you a graph. Okay. So on this slide I will be explaining you both light intensity and carbon dioxide concentration. Okay. Now see here, photosynthesis increases with the light intensity up to a certain limit only. We all know that in photosynthesis light is required. So light intensity, if we keep on increasing the light intensity, initially the photosynthesis will keep on increasing. But it will increase up to a certain limit only, and then it will get stabilized at point S dash. So if you see this diagram, first diagram, okay, on the x-axis it is increasing the light intensity, as you go towards right, the light intensity keeps on increasing, and this is the rate of photosynthesis. So you see, initially when the light is increasing, the rate of photosynthesis is also increasing. Can you see? Now it becomes stable after a certain point S dash. Okay, after this, even if you keep on increasing the light, now it has some certain limit, the plant has certain limit. So even if you keep on increasing the intensity of light, this rate of photosynthesis will not increase. So here you can see rate of photosynthesis is stabilized. Okay, and this is the highest rate. This point is the highest rate of photosynthesis. And when is it reached? At, if I compare it with concentration of CO2, So this is happening at 0.02% concentration of carbon dioxide. So when I keep the concentration of carbon dioxide constant as 0.02% in the air, okay, then this is how it increases with the increase in intensity. So initially it will increase, but after certain point this will not increase, it becomes stabilized. Okay, now but if at this point the carbon dioxide concentration is increased, so at this particular point, okay, can you see S dash point? It is same here in the second graph. So at this point now it has become, this is the highest point, and after this it gets stabilized. But at this point, if I increase the carbon dioxide concentration from 0.02 to say 0.05%, okay, now what I am doing, the light intensity remains same, but if I increase the concentration of carbon dioxide, then the photosynthesis also increases further, and then again it gets stabilized at another point which is mentioned here by S double dash. Okay, so here you see it is again increasing, but again it will get stabilized here. So now in the first diagram you were increasing light intensity, but after a certain limit it was not increasing. But now if you are continuously increasing the light intensity, but at reaching the highest point you increase the carbon dioxide, you supply some carbon dioxide more, okay, then it will further increase like this. There will be a jump like this, but again it will get stabilized. Okay, now in this case this becomes the highest rate of photosynthesis at 0.05 concentration of CO2. Okay, so these are the two factors together diagram. I hope you guys have understood. Next is temperature. Okay, now with the rise in temperature, the rate of photosynthesis rises. Okay, so it is directly proportional. So here you are seeing this x-axis is increasing temperature, and this is the rate of photosynthesis. So initially you see that when you are increasing temperature, this keeps on rising here. So why is it rising? See, increasing molecular collisions. The molecules will collide more now because the temperature is increased. So increasing molecular collision due to increased kinetic energy leads to an increase in the rate of photosynthesis. Now which molecules you are talking about? The raw material. What are the raw material of photosynthesis? Water and carbon dioxide. Okay, yes. So this rise occurs up to an optimum temperature of 35 degree. So if you see here, this rise keeps on happening till 35 degree. Okay, so this is the maximum suitable temperature when the photosynthesis occurs the best. So this can be asked in your MCQs, remember this. Now after which the rate falls. So now after which, even if you are increasing the temperature, the rate falls. Now why is it happening? Because we are increasing temperature, kinetic energy should increase and there should be more photosynthesis. Then why is it dipping? See here. Okay, so above 40 degree what happens? After which the rate falls and stops above 40 degree. So this is the maximum rate of photosynthesis reached at the optimal temperature. What is the optimal temperature? 35. Uske baad if you increase the temperature, so around 40 it remains same, and around 40 it keeps on decreasing. So what is happening at this uppermost limit? The enzymes are destroyed. So chlorophyll also is destroyed, and the enzymes which help in photosynthesis are destroyed. So now with every rise of 10 degree, okay, a rise, first you watch this. Breaking of bonds in the enzyme structure leads to the change in the shape of active sites. That is, there happens a denaturation हो जाता है enzymes का. So active site का shape change हो जाता है, and thereby it decreases the rate of photosynthesis. Now children, a rise of 10 degree up to the optimum temperature, that is up to 35, doubles the rate of photosynthesis. मतलब ये बोल रहा है when you increase the temperature by 10 degree, the rate of photosynthesis keeps on doubling. For example, if you take the temperature from 20 to 30, so from 20 to 30 there is a 10 degree rise, or from 22 to 32, or for example 25 to 35. So here you can see there is 10 degree rise in the temperature. So here the rate of photosynthesis keeps on doubling.
तो 20 से 30 जब आपने उसको टेम्परेचर इंक्रीज किया तो पहले जो रेट थी 20 तक उससे डबल हो जाएगी. ओके, सो बट दिस हैपेंस ओनली टिल 35. आफ्टर 35 see the rate falls and it stops above 40. Okay, so this is like this, 35 to 40 is this, and then it keeps on dropping because the enzymes are denatured, the enzymes are destroyed. Okay, I hope you have understood the temperature point as well. Now the water content. The scarcity of water due to reduced absorption from the soil or due to an excessive loss through transpiration. So how does a plant have a scarcity of water? Either the transpiration is more or the absorption from the roots, absorption from the soil through the roots is less. अगर उसने absorb ही कम किया है या फिर उसने transpiration ज़्यादा किया है, then there is a scarcity of water inside the plant body. Okay, and this scarcity of water reduces the rate of photosynthesis. Why? By decreasing the diffusive capacity, that is carbon dioxide का intake ही कम हो जाएगा. ओके, जो कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड डिफ्यूज होकर अंदर आ रहा है वो कम हो जाएगा बिकॉज ऑफ द क्लोजर ऑफ स्टोमेटा. बिकॉज नाउ सी व्हाट हैज हैपेंड, वाटर कंटेंट इज लेस, या तो पानी कम एब्जॉर्ब किया है या ज्यादा ट्रांसपिरेट किया है, वाटर कंटेंट इज लेस, इट मीन्स द स्टोमेटा विल क्लोज डाउन so that the water is not getting lost. So when the stomata closes, it cannot take carbon dioxide inside. Now if it doesn't take carbon dioxide inside, what happens? Photosynthesis will decrease, right? So children, you should also know this fact that only 1% of the water which is absorbed by the root is utilized in the photosynthesis. Otherwise maximum of it is transpirated. Okay, now let's go ahead. We have studied the external factors. Now let's talk about internal factors. So first internal factor is chlorophyll, obviously. So nutritional deficiency of minerals causes loss of chlorophyll. So if the plant has not absorbed enough of nutrition, enough of minerals from the soil, or if the soil is deficient of the nutrients, then what happens? Chlorophyll is lost. Loss of chlorophyll happens, and hence if the chlorophyll is less, the drop in the trapping solar energy. Okay, if chlorophyll is less, who will trap the solar energy? And if solar energy is not trapped, then the photosynthesis will decrease, right? So the chlorophyll is the internal factor. And how is chlorophyll lost? Due to the nutritional deficiency of minerals. Next is protoplasm. Okay, dehydration of the protoplasm. What is protoplasm? Protoplasm is the that fluid-like substance, the jelly-like substance inside the cells. So if it is dehydrated, if the water is lost, so dehydration of the protoplasm for some reason, okay, if with any reason, if the protoplasm has dehydrated, it reduces the rate of photosynthesis. Similarly, the accumulation of carbohydrates, that is sugar and starch, also reduces the rate of photosynthesis. Now what is this? Now suppose the plant has produced food, carbohydrate is there. Now this carbohydrate, it has produced excess food. So a lot of carbohydrates is accumulated in the protoplasm. Okay, अगर इकट्ठा हो गया है lot of carbohydrate, या फिर even if it is converted into sugar and starch, if that is accumulated, ज़्यादा store करके रखा है, तभी भी rate of photosynthesis is reduced. I hope this is clear to you. So protoplasm is another factor. In protoplasm you have to remember two things. First is dehydration of the protoplasm, it reduces the rate. Second is accumulation of carbohydrates, that is sugar or starch, reduces the rate of photosynthesis. Next internal factor is structure of the leaf itself, कि leaf का कैसा structure है. Okay, so there are three things that play important role. The thickness of the cuticle, cuticle कितना thick है. Second is distribution of stomata, कितने ज़्यादा stomata है lower epidermis में. And third is the size of the leaf. If the size of the leaf is small, the surface area is small, less photosynthesis will happen. Correct? So these three factors, thickness, if the cuticle is very thick, photosynthesis, the light will not able to enter properly. Stomata is less or scarce, then the photosynthesis will be less. and if the size of the leaf is small, it is not very large or flat, then also the photosynthesis is reduced. And if you take two plants, एक का size small है, एक का size big है, okay, so which will have more photosynthesis? The leaf having big leaf, okay, because the surface area is increased for the absorption of sunlight. So I hope you have understood how structure of leaf also influences the amount of light and the amount of carbon dioxide which is entering the leaf. So the amount of light is been done by thickness of cuticle and the stomata, and the size of the leaf, and the distribution of stomata influences the amount of carbon dioxide that is diffusing in the leaf. I hope it is clear. So cuticle अगर thick है तो light कम enter हो पाएगी, okay. Size of the leaf अगर छोटी है तो कम light absorb कर पाएगा, right. Stomata is less, then less carbon dioxide comes in. Stomata is more, then more carbon dioxide comes in. And you guys already know कि amount of light और CO2 कैसे affect करता है photosynthesis को. Next is so these were the factors. Now I am explaining you some important concepts, or you can say important points here. So dawn to dusk, natural changes in the environmental conditions and photosynthesis. How photosynthesis is related to the natural changes in the environment that is happening from dawn to dusk. Okay. Now in every period of 24 hours, plants are subjected to a regular cycle of changes in light intensity. है ना? Afternoon में the light intensity is so high. In the morning it is slightly less. In the night it is almost zero. Okay. So in every period of 24 hours, plants are subjected to a regular cycle of changes in the light intensity. And the rate of photosynthesis increases from dawn to midday. जैसे जैसे afternoon होती है, midday होता है, rate of photosynthesis increases, correct? Because the intensity of light is increasing. And then it declines as dusk approaches. जैसे जैसे evening आती है, it declines. So plants like other organism also respire. Now ये तो हो गया. अब plants also respire. Respiration also takes place. So in the respiration what happens? It takes in oxygen. Now it is opposite of photosynthesis. Okay, pay attention. In the respiration it takes in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide. So in light, so whenever there is sunlight, that is in the morning time, the effects of this respiratory activity is masked. छुप जाती है. किसकी वजह से छुप जाती है? By photosynthesis, right? Photosynthesis is more prominent and respiration happens, but it is masked, and there is a net output of oxygen. So morning में since photosynthesis is more, respiration is less, so output में कौन होगा? Oxygen. Now in the darkness now photosynthesis is not happening, so respiration alone is responsible for changes in the gaseous components. So now only respiration is happening. So now this is the gaseous composition is only because of only because of respiration of a plant's surrounding atmosphere. Okay, have you all understood? So during respiration it takes in oxygen, gives out carbon dioxide. During photosynthesis it takes in carbon dioxide and gives out oxygen. So in the morning oxygen is the output, in the night carbon dioxide is the output. Now, does photosynthesis takes place at night? This is a very common question that students have. So see here children, some desert plants and some epiphytes are able to release oxygen even during the night, okay, as they perform photosynthesis using a different pathway. This pathway is not there for your portion, but just remember the name, that there is a different pathway called CAM pathway. Okay, and what are the examples of such plants which does photosynthesis at night? You have to remember that aloe vera, tulsi, neem and people, they all perform photosynthesis at night.
We'll be talking about different experiments on photosynthesis. So experiments which are based on photosynthesis and which helps us to explain the phenomena of photosynthesis. All those experiments we'll look today. So first of all, we need to destarch. Okay, so first step for any experiment would be destarching.
that is removal of starch. A plant used for experiments on photosynthesis should initially be placed in the dark for 24 to 48 hours to de-starch the leaves. Okay, so what is the first step? You should keep your plant in dark for 24 to 48 hours so that all the starch that is stored in it, all the food that is stored in it in the form of starch is used. Okay, then this will be a de-starched plant, and then we can use it for any experiments on photosynthesis. So now let's begin. So during this period, all the starch will be removed from the leaves and stored in the storage organs. The leaves will not show the presence of starch. Now the leaves will not show any presence of starch. A de-starched plant is one whose leaves are free from starch. So let's now do a test, okay, to test a leaf for starch, okay, whether there is starch present in the leaf or not. This test is also known as iodine test. Okay, children. So what do we do here? We first dip, can you see here in the diagram? I'll just take the laser pointer. You dip the leaf in boiling water for a minute to kill the cells. So first step is you take a leaf and dip it in the boiling water. This will kill all the cells. Now boil the leaf in methylated spirit over a water bath till it becomes pale white due to the removal of chlorophyll. The leaf now becomes hard and brittle. So in the second step, you have taken a beaker, filled water in it, and taken another boiling tube in which you have filled methylated spirit. So this is known as a water bath. So you are not directly heating the methylated spirit, otherwise it can catch fire. Okay. So in the water bath, we have kept the methylated spirit in which you have kept your leaf. So we will boil the leaf in methylated spirit over a water bath till it becomes pale white. Why it will become pale white? Because chlorophyll will be killed by this process. Okay. So leaf now will become hard and brittle. Next step is again we will keep this hard and brittle leaf in water. Okay, in hot water so that it softens. It becomes soft. Now spread the leaf in a dish. So we will now spread it on a white tile or a dish, and we will pour iodine solution on it. So are you seeing? I am dropping iodine solution on it. Okay. The presence of starch will be indicated by a blue-black color. So if starch is present, it will show a blue-black color in the leaf. And if blue-black color is not seen, it means starch was not present. Okay. A leaf without starch will show brown coloration, whereas a leaf with the starch will show blue-black coloration. So children, if you take a leaf directly from a plant which is there in the sunlight, then you will see that starch will be present in it. But if you take a plant which is de-starched like this, if you take a leaf from this plant which has been de-starched for 24 hours, then the leaf will show brown coloration. Is that clear to you? Okay. Now the next experiment is to show that chlorophyll is necessary for photosynthesis. Okay. In this, we take a plant with variegated leaves. Okay. Having some green and some non-green areas. So what is a variegated leaf? In which the leaf which is not fully green, which has some other colors as well. Example, Calus, geranium and croton. So these are some examples of non-variegated leaves. Okay, these are examples of variegated leaves. Can you see? These have white patches, these have green patches. Okay, these have white stripes, these have white dots. So these are the variegated leaves. Mostly this type of a leaf, the leaf D. Okay, this type of a leaf is selected for this experiment. Okay, so what we will do first, we will de-starch the leaf first by keeping the plant in dark room for few days. Then we will place the plant in the sun. So first we have de-starched. Now when we will keep in the sun, then it will start producing glucose. So after a few hours, pluck one leaf, make its outline on paper and mark the green and non-green areas on the outline. Okay. Now test the leaf for starch. You will be amazed to see that only the green parts of the leaf will turn bluish black, showing the presence of starch. So see here. So when we now do the same iodine test that we did before, the same iodine test when we do on these variegated leaves, you will see that the green patch in which the chlorophyll was present, can you see here, the green patch turned blue-black, whereas the yellow part did not turn blue-black, showing the absence of food. So it is clearly shown here that only green part had chlorophyll, and that is why it produced food. Is that clear? That is why starch is produced here, and no stored starch is there because we have already de-starched the leaf. Now, the next experiment is to show that sunlight is necessary for photosynthesis. So take a plant with de-starched leaves, cover one of the leaves with black paper on which a design is cut. Okay, like this. So take a leaf, take a black paper on which a design of maybe a star is cut, and then stick that black paper to it. Place this plant in the sun now. So you are not plucking the leaf, okay? You are taking the whole plant and covering one of its leaves with such a black paper, and now then place the plant in the sun. After few hours, now you pluck the leaf and test the leaf which is covered by black paper for the presence of starch. And it will be observed that only parts of the leaf which could get light, that is this part of the leaf could get light, and this part, can you see this part of the leaf was able to get light, but not this part, the gray part. The black part was not able to receive sunlight. Okay. So it will be observed that only the parts of the leaf which could get light through the cutout design, as well as those that were left uncovered by the paper, turned blue-black. It shows the presence of starch. Now, see this diagram. This is the leaf, how it was. Now after the iodine test, only this part turned blue-black and this part remained brown. Clear to you? Now the next experiment is to show that carbon dioxide is necessary for photosynthesis. Okay, let's talk about carbon dioxide now. So take the plant with de-starched leaves. Okay, take a plant like this, and what I have done, see here in the diagram, insert a part, half of one of the leaves. Can you see half of one of the leaf is inserted in a jar like this, in a conical flask or a jar. Now this jar contains potassium hydroxide. Can you see potassium hydroxide here? Now what does this potassium hydroxide do is it absorbs the carbon dioxide. So whatever carbon dioxide was there in the air in the jar, that is also absorbed by this potassium hydroxide. So now this half part of the leaf is not exposed to carbon dioxide at all. Okay. Now leave the plant in sunlight, and then what you do, you test for it. Okay. See. So even if you do it like this, if you place water in it and make the leaf like this, so water is going, so this part of the leaf will do photosynthesis, correct? So in this part only the food will be formed, the starch will be formed. So after a few hours, test the leaf for starch. The part of the leaf which was exposed to the atmospheric air becomes blue-black. So this part of the leaf which was exposed to air, this part of the leaf which was exposed to atmospheric air turned blue-black. Can you see? Because here only starch was produced. So by this experiment we can say that carbon dioxide is necessary for photosynthesis. Okay. So the part of the leaf which was exposed to the atmospheric air becomes blue-black, and the part of the leaf inside the flask containing potassium hydroxide does not become blue-black, showing that carbon dioxide is necessary for photosynthesis. The part of the leaf outside the flask becomes the control experiment. So this is the control experiment, okay, where this is forming starch and this is not forming starch. Now let us see another experiment to show that oxygen is produced during photosynthesis. So now we are talking about the product. So the product of photosynthesis is oxygen. Let us see an experiment. So place some water plants like hydrilla or alotia in a beaker which contains pond water and cover them by a short stemmed funnel. So see here, you have taken this hydrilla plant, okay, and you have covered it with a funnel which has a very short stem, okay, not a very long stem funnel.
So, and also you have to take pond water, or you should not be taking your distilled water, or should not be taking your RO water which you use for drinking. Okay, so take pond water. Now invert a test tube full of water. So take a test tube, completely fill it with water and invert on it. Ensure that the level of water in the beaker is above the level of stem of the inverted funnel. Okay, so level of the water in the beaker should be above the level of the stem. Now place the apparatus in the sun for a few hours. So as soon as you place like this, now some of the very little water will flow out. Okay, and there will be complete water in this test tube. But now when you keep it in the sunlight, okay, for few hours, you will see that few bubbles are arising, and this part, okay, starts to fill up with gas. So the water will be pushed down. Okay, so place the apparatus in the sun for few hours. Bubbles of gas will collect in the test tube, and you can test the gas in the test tube. A glowing splinter bursts into flame, which shows the presence of oxygen. Let's see an animation here. So here is a burning splinter, can you see? And when you bring it close to oxygen, close to this gas, it will start burning. Is it clear to you? So this is a repetition. That is why you are saying it again and again. Okay, so when you are bringing a glowing splinter close, it will burn into flames. This shows the presence of oxygen. Today we are going to do a very important topic, that is carbon cycle. So what is carbon cycle, my dear students? First we should understand it is a series of chemical reactions, okay, in which the carbon as a chemical element from CO2, you can see CO2 is present in the atmosphere in 0.03%. Okay, so this carbon, chemical element carbon, okay, is removed from the air, okay, used by the living organisms like plants and animals for their body processes, and then it is finally returned back to the atmosphere. So this whole cycle is known as carbon cycle. So let's see what happens. First step is photosynthesis. So we know that green plants use carbon dioxide in the process of photosynthesis. Okay, so green plants, that is the producers, use carbon dioxide in the air to produce we know carbohydrates, glucose, correct? So sugar, starch, anything. So that way the carbon enters the plant. The second is food chains. So whenever any animal, in this case a rabbit, is eating that plant, okay, then sometimes what happens, some other animal will eat this rabbit, or they can eat the plant and the rabbit both. So what happens in food chains? So through the food chains, the food which contains carbon, obviously the food will contain carbon in the form of carbohydrate or any other products. It passes on from plants to animals, that is consumers. Now this carbon forms an essential element of all the body tissues of both plants as well as animal. So another animal that eats any one of them, okay, then carbon passes on to them. Is that clear to you? So I'll read it again. Through food chains, the food which contains carbon in the form of carbohydrate, etc., passes on from plants to animals, that is consumers. Now remember that carbon is an essential element of all body tissues of both plants and animals. Okay, so it forms a part of the body tissues. Then when these animals respire, okay, whenever there is respiration happening, so all plants and animals respire, even the plants respire, okay, by oxidizing the carbohydrate that is there which they have taken through food, okay, in their cells to produce energy, and then they give out carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Is that clear? All the plants as well as animals respire, okay. In each cell there is cellular respiration, you know that. Carbohydrate again converts back to carbon dioxide to produce energy. So this carbon dioxide is again given to the atmosphere through respiration. Is this step clear to you guys? Yes. Now comes the decomposers. Okay, now it decays. This animal and plant will decay at some time. So the dead remains of the plants and animals are consumed by bacteria and fungi, that is decomposers. And in this process, they break down the organic matter, releasing carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. Okay, so they act upon the dead remains of the plants and animals and decompose this organic matter and release carbon dioxide again in the atmosphere. So you see that decay is releasing CO2 again in the atmosphere. Now, when all of them becomes fossil, okay, so next point is fossilization. So they will be buried, okay, deep inside the layers of the earth with a lot of pressure. They will convert into fossils. So fossil fuels, we know, like coal, oil, gas, all these fuels are formed by the decay and ultimate fossilization of these three. Okay, so this, when fossil fuels like coal, oil and gas, they burn, they again give out carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now, so when a fuel such as wood or fossil fuel like coal, petroleum or natural gas is burned, the carbon contained in it is oxidized to carbon dioxide, which is given back into the atmosphere. And all the fuels named above originally come from living organism. Obviously, all these fuels have come from all these three living organisms. Now, when you heat limestone, limestone is also formed in the same way. So, certain amount of carbon dioxide is released during heating or burning of limestone also in lime kilns. So, limestone which is formed by this, again from limestone, when limestone burns, again CO2 is released in the atmosphere. So, this was the whole carbon cycle, my dear children. I hope you have understood carbon cycle really well. I tried my level best to give you a pictorial representation of the carbon cycle. If you have understood it and liked the video, please give good comments and write in the comment section if you have liked it. Give it a thumbs up, share it with all your friends and keep the learning always on. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, do it right away and watch all the parts for it. Bye bye my dear children.